Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
No one thinks we have the balls to pull this off.
Okay, girls. Let's go get 'em.
Hello and welcome to Girls on Film with the BFI at Home. I'm Anna Smith and today we'll be talking about body matters on screen. Now, body image and body shape are important issues that we'll be talking about in future programmes. But today it's female physiology that's hitting the headlines. I'll be talking to the actor and writer Michaela Coel and to the film critic Rhianna Dhillon. Several new releases have a refreshing, open-hearted and relaxed approach to the complex issues of the physicality of women's bodies. For decades, bodily functions were taboo on screen. But Michaela Cole's series I May Destroy You, now on BBC iPlayer, has been making headlines for being bold and brave about the issue of consent. And the inclusion of tampons and blood clots in sex scenes has caught viewers' attention too. Also making waves is director Nisha Ganatra's recently released Womb Stories, a groundbreaking campaigning short which uses animation and live action to dispel myths and address life-changing moments such as miscarriages, the menopause and endometriosis. And currently on release in cinemas is the US indie pick St. Francis, written by and starring Kelly O'Sullivan. On the surface, it's a light-hearted comedy, but at its core there is a quiet revolution going on. It deals with previously underrepresented subjects as wide-ranging as menstruation, abortion, good and bad sex, babies and breastfeeding, and interracial same-sex couples. I asked Kelly O'Sullivan about the film.
St. Francis talks so honestly about sex, pregnancy, abortion, breastfeeding, periods. I think most women watching this film will have moments when they think, oh, wow, so it's not just me, that sense of relief and that recognition. Why do you think we are all so coy about this? And why does that need to change?
Oh gosh, this is the first screenplay that I've ever written, so it felt like a sort of torturous journey. But I knew that I wanted to write a film that was based on two real experiences that I've had, which was I was actually a nanny and I did actually have an abortion. And so I thought if I juxtapose that in the same summer, it could be an interesting plot. I think we've received a lot of messaging from the times that we're really young that we should keep the messy parts of ourselves hidden. That having a period or, going through the decision to have an abortion or what it's like to ask a man to wear a condom or being expected to be on birth control, all of those things were subliminally or outrightly encouraged not to talk about those things. And I think the more we talk about it, the less isolated we'll feel in those experiences.
Were there any particular points in your life where that penny dropped and you felt really passionately about the fact that we just need to communicate more and help each other, really, because it helps other women to talk about these things, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when I went through my abortion, I didn't know that a medication abortion was possible. I felt like that experience was shrouded in so much mystery, even though I was in my early 30s and I knew people who had had abortions. I feel like there's a lack of communication in those experiences. And so when I went through that, I thought this is something people need to talk about more.
Well, as you said, the film is particularly matter of fact about the process of that kind of abortion. I'd certainly never seen that on film before, because in the rare cases that abortion is featured, it's generally either with a judgmental tone or featuring a very dramatic kind of operation scene.
Yeah.
What kind of reactions have you had from people about this different way of depicting it?
I think people have been pleasantly surprised because, again, it's not wrung for every ounce of drama that it can be. It feels hopefully very normalizing. And I think people have said it's refreshing and it makes them feel less scared and less ashamed for people who have actually gone through that experience themselves, that they say, oh yeah, it doesn't have to be the one plot point in the film, and there doesn't have to be so much hand-wringing about whether or not this person should make this decision. It just presents it as is.
It must have been difficult for you acting out what you'd experienced in real life, the harder parts of that, or was it?
I thought it was going to be more difficult, but I think there was something about being in the process of making an independent film, which everybody's wearing so many hats, that I didn't have time to have like an emotional experience. I was mostly like, do we have the right props? Are we going to lose this location? And so I think from the time, that they said action, then I would experience those emotions. And then when they would say cut, then it was like, okay, do we have enough guitars for the next scene? So in that way, it felt sort of nice to also be a producer. I couldn't get into my feelings for too long.
So you're working with your partner as director. What were the joys and the challenges of working together with that?
Well, the joys are that I trust him more than anybody in the world, and we had a really direct communication. And the challenges are that it just pushed our relationship to the brink. Just in terms of having those really honest conversations and arguing about work and why we think the way that we do. And then again, making such a scrappy film. Saying, did you get that location? And did we get what we needed for the day? It felt like there were no boundaries ever. And that was really challenging. But I think it ultimately resulted in a better film because we were equally invested and it felt equally personal to both of us.
Have you had different reactions from men and women, from the different genders to the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think men have mostly been surprised. They've said that they've learned a lot of things that they didn't know. And I think a lot of them were able to connect with it in a way that they weren't expecting. And women have sort of said like, yeah, that is the way it is. And I think what we were talking about before, they felt seen. They've had some of their experiences reflected back at them from the screen. Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't sort of pigeonhole your film and say it's an abortion movie because it's about so many different things. Right. And one of the interesting things about it is it also features a mixed race same-sex couple who Bridget and Annie's for. There's a really powerful moment when Lily Majaku's character Annie reveals that she'd been mistaken for the babysitter.
Yeah.
That's a really thought-provoking scene. Is that kind of unconscious bias something that you increasingly observe and something that you're increasingly aware of as a writer?
Absolutely. And it was really important that it made it into the film because, again, we didn't want the interracial couple, the crux of the drama to be from that, but we wanted to honor the experience of what it's like for people of color and for this woman who lives in an affluent community to have those sort of unconscious biases be reflected at her, those microaggressions every single day. And that story actually happened to Lily.
Really?
Yeah, she was taking an Uber home and I think the driver asked her if she had just gotten off of work, assuming that this beautiful house in a wealthy suburb couldn't be her house.
Now, your young co-star, Ramona Edith Williams, she is so cute. And there are some wonderful words of wisdom placed in her mouth in your script, which I just thought was a really lovely contradiction with her tiny little frame and then all these really powerful phrases. What, again, were the joys and the challenges of working with her?
I mean, the joy is that she's just an amazing actor. She was so present. She was so fun. She wasn't coached. The challenges are that she was 6 years old. And, at a certain point, she would be like, can we just go play with some ants? And so I feel, ants on the ground. And so I sort of became a nanny again. And that was a joy of it as well, was, okay, so I'm gonna have this nanny relationship with Ramona. Kelly and Ramona will have this relationship where as soon as they call cut, we're not filming, we just go and we play in the backyard. And by the end of the day, I was like, oh right, nannying is exhausting.
That was Kelly OSullivan talking about St. Francis. Another woman writing about her own life and playing a version of herself is Michaela Cole. She is equally unflinching in her wish to normalise body matters. A headline-grabbing moment in her BBC series I May Destroy You is a scene involving bodily fluids that have been taboo on our screens. I caught up with Rhianna Dhillon and asked her if she'd seen anything like it before.
Absolutely not. I mean, that was incredible. It gives me goose pimples just talking about it, thinking about that scene, because it was so exciting to see on camera and literally has never been talked about. I mean, that's not something that I would never really talk about with my friends, and so the fact that we have, just by portraying that in a very brief scene, normalises it so much, and that means that people younger women will be able to talk about it with their friends, and and that will spark more conversations and lead to other kind of things that we perhaps are ashamed to talk about. So I think this marks a really important time when it comes to periods on film. So exciting. I mean, it's weird to be excited about that, but it is exciting.
But it's natural. As women have had periods for quite a long time, it is exciting. But at the same time, it's challenging for me because I'm generally quite squeamish. To be honest, about anything, I don't want to see anyone's bodily fluids on screens, whatever they are, even though I absolutely applaud it and I see what you're saying. And it makes me think, is it me being brought up a certain way and it's challenging the way I've been brought up, or are there some mysteries that should be kept out of the bedroom? Discuss.
That is really interesting. I sort of think with film, there should really be no stone unturned when it comes to the human body. Because if we've got things like David Cronenberg films where you have the insides coming out in all these grotesque ways, and that is almost normalised, then we should also normalise the more realistic side of being a human.
Let's turn to St. Francis, because this deals with a lot of topics, including periods, but many others, about the female body and about the normality of being a woman. What did you like about this film?
Everything. I thought it was such a brilliant film. I was so happy that we're getting to talk about it. Just the fact that, like at the beginning, when she bleeds all over the bed and it's all over each other and it's all over his mouth because he's gone down on her, and the fact that the her boyfriend at the time, or the guy that she was sleeping with, was really casual about it and not scared about it. And I think we do almost project that onto men sometimes. I think they can handle a lot more than we sometimes give them credit for. I really enjoyed the oh God, I can't believe I got my period and the blood's everywhere, and we just clean it up and then we move on and get on with our day. That was really nice.
I think that's really important, how well he deals with it, and much as we see in I May Destroy You actually as well, just that kind of, okay, all right, this is just something that happens, and kind of almost a little bit curious in St. Francis. He's a bit about the details of it, and I think we shouldn't just be talking about young women watching films like this and adverts like this and TV shows like this. Everybody needs to be educated and feel sort of more comfortable about discussing these things.
Yes.
And to have an image of a man just kind of shrugging something like that off and just going, okay, well, that's, how it happens.
Yeah.
Or even wanting to learn about it is really powerful.
And also then writing his emotion journal or whatever he does. He writes down all of his emotions about it. And I think that's really lovely. If a bit, it's quite a millennial thing to do. But it's, I think, seeing the fact that he was trying to deal with it in a very open, emotional way instead of just repressing it is really important to see on camera. Like, how often do we see the male dealing with something in that way more than the woman? Whereas like Bridget is just like, no, I'm done with that, let's move on. And also that bit, that scene where she goes to the clinic and she takes the picture of the ultrasound. She doesn't want to look particularly, but she takes a picture anyway. And it's just for posterity, really, more than anything. And just as a marker of that period in her life, I thought. And I thought that was really nice, instead of it just being like, I never want to think about that again or look at that again. It's this is what happened, and I'm going to keep that memory just for now at least. And I thought that was also so great to see. And they kind of had a similar moment in I May Destroy You. So it kind of looks like the female writers at the moment are really tapping into similar ideas, which is really nice to see.
Thanks to Rhianna Dhillon and Kelly O'Sullivan and to the BFI for hosting us. During lockdown, the BFI have been working harder than ever to bring films into your homes. You can support them by donating £5. Please text BFI at home to 70085. Text costs £5 plus one standard message rate. Thanks for your support. You can hear a longer version of these interviews by subscribing to Girls on Film on all major pod platforms. The link's below the screen, right here. We'll be back on the 18th of August when we'll talk about two new British films, Makeup and Summerland, starring Gemma Arterton. See you then.